And then the next piece is that relevance. Well, whatever order you do it in, but one of those next
Yeah.
pieces is the relevance and something that you're pulling out specific to that prospect. If you can, what do you do in cases where, for instance, that prospect doesn't have a big like social presence, online presence? You can't find something. Are you looking at the company? Like, where are you trying to dig up that relevant statement from?
Yeah. So I have something I call the hierarchy of relevance. So it's kind of five parts if you kind of think of it like a pyramid. At the very bottom of
Hmm.
the pyramid is the most common stuff you're going to find to add relevance to a message, whether that's an email or a cold call. Name and company merge tag, right? That's the most
Right.
basic shit that you want to have when you reach out to someone, right?
Yeah.
I think the other type of relevance that you can do more at scale is stuff that's related to this person's industry. And then it's stuff that's related to this person, like as a persona, right? So segmentation is going to get you a lot of the way there. Can I talk to people in the same industry, in the same
Hmm.
position, at the same types of companies? The other two parts of that pyramid are stuff related to that person's company and then stuff related to the individual. Honestly, unless you're doing really high level enterprise and strat sales, you're not going to usually find very much on the individual outside of what's on
Hmm.
a LinkedIn profile. And for most people, that's just a resume with nothing on it except for their career experience. So company stuff and is really where you're going to add most of the relevance to your message. Now, in terms of what to look for, because people tend to, I don't know if you've done this. It's kind of funny. Like when you watch a rep, you have them share your screen, you just watch them research someone or an account. And the analogy I always use is they do the equivalent of going into the grocery store with no idea of what you're going to buy and just going through every single aisle. Could you imagine how
Yeah.
long
Yeah.
it would take to go through a Whole Foods or whatever?
Yeah.
What you want to do is come with a shopping list, right? Okay, cool. I'm going to get this. I'm going to get this. I'm going to need some veggies or whatever.
Hmm.
Take the same approach with your research. You should have two or three common things that you're looking for every single time that you do research on someone. And that way you start to get into this rhythm where I'm looking for this specific trigger and I know that this is going to connect to my message based on this way. Like the example I shared earlier, we're looking for some sort of digital initiative. We're looking for some sort of cost savings initiative. We're looking for any kind of signs of growth that they might be talking about because that's going to add call center volume. Anything that they talk about that would mention that they care about customer service. Anything I find on their website that's showing that they're trying to get people to self-serve by finding answers to their own questions versus calling in.
Hmm.
I'm looking for all of those things. So the three buckets is I look at education, accomplishments, and then investments. So it's what are they educating their customers about as a bucket? Where are they investing? So that's hiring initiatives, et cetera. And then what do they brag about? The accomplishments. Basically, I'm going to look in those three buckets and find maybe one or two common things within those buckets that I'm going to use every time. And you've done a lot of this, right? I mean, like 80,
Hmm.
90% of the time, usually the prospects, if you've segmented well, they're mostly going through the same types of things. So I want to have that information ready.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely make that a more efficient process. Yeah, I've definitely been there with like your analogy about the grocery store, and definitely something I always try to work back is like, okay, we can build the same click path. Like once you know, like if it's a brand new segment and you're just figuring out where you can find that sort of stuff, it is a little bit of clicking around. But then once you get like, oh, I go to the there's a careers page, and the careers page shows me that they're hiring for these roles. So I know I always just jump straight there or wherever those other places are. But then you can just go like, no, I only have to click on like 4 links within this page, and that brings me all the information that I need. Yeah, I love that formula though. The buckets are very, very helpful. And then you have your priority drop.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. And that's obviously that's something that I imagine is something that you can help these people with, but obviously you're not pitching at that point. You're kind of just
Yeah.
presenting those as possibilities. So yeah, walk me through the formula for that bit.
Yeah. So it's like a reverse value prop. You know,
Hmm.
one thing I learned from a bunch of the folks at Zoom Info, what they talk about is customer voice. So their sort of rule and how they train it is anytime you're tempted to pitch something, you have to do it through the voice of a customer. So how would someone else talk about what you do?
Mm.
So An exercise that a sales leader can do, or a rep or a manager with your team, that's really interesting. So in a training call, I'll be like, all right, everyone, drop into the chat for me here in Zoom. What does your company do? How would you explain it to this type of prospect? People drop it in. And I say, okay, well, how would your best customers explain what you do to one of their peers? And it's very different, right? They don't say platform,
Yeah, yeah.
dashboarding, they don't say any of that kind of stuff. They just say, hey, you know how we want to accomplish this, but this like thing that's a pain in the ass always gets in the way? Like that's the basic formula. I want to do this, but without this, or I want to do this and I keep running into this. That's the
Hmm.
basic priority drop formula. So it's some sort of hierarchy category of things that I care about. So, for example, when I was just making calls earlier, when I talk to a sales executive, I usually hear two things right now. One is that they're doubling down on top of funnel. So deals are taking longer to close. The average deal size is smaller. So how do we make up for that with top of funnel? The second thing that I hear is AE self-sourcing. So how do we get our AEs to do more prospecting so they don't rely so much on SDRs and inbound? So that right there, those are two overarching themes that I hear across all the sales calls that I do.
Hmm.
I'm categorizing them in 2 or 3 words so that, because we can see each other right now. You obviously can't see people when you're calling them. So it's like when you're saying the priority drops, it has to be readable. Like I have to like literally be able to compartmentalize it in my head. So I'm literally saying, one, this thing, or they hear two, this thing. And I'm really like taking the time to like really enunciate those things. But yeah, it's category. And then what are they typically trying to accomplish? And then what usually gets in the way?
Hmm.
The other piece of advice that I have here where I see people messing up, this is not just on the cold call, but just in general, is they're not speaking to the things that this person based on their seniority would care about.
Yeah.
So an example of that, if I'm a sales development manager, I'm going to care a lot about what my team's reply rates are and how they sequence and what our cold call pickup rates are. If I'm a VP of sales, I don't probably even know what is in the sequences if it's at a large
Hmm.
company. I don't even maybe know what tools or how to use the tools. So I'm not going to talk about open and reply rates and all of these like kind of metrics. I'm going to talk about pipeline. I'm going to talk about creating more diversification in our pipeline so that we don't rely so much on inbound and like, or I'm going to talk about, hey, one of the lead sources that we've tried a lot is all of this inbound and webinars, and the lead quality is not great. We can't hit our pipeline targets. It's above the line, as Skip Miller would call it, above the line messaging versus below the line. That's super important with those priority drops. And that's one thing as a sales leader you can really help your team understand is, hey, how do we talk to people that are below the line versus above the line? That's messaging that should be provided,
Hmm.
to your team. So that would be another kind of piece of advice around that priority drop is you will get pushed down to the level of your business acumen. So if you talk about stuff that managers care about to a VP, they're going to say, yeah, I have a manager that takes care of that. Why don't you talk to so-and-so? Right. So you need to kind of be able to do both.